Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another round of Bases Picks. As always, please like and subscribe, share with a friend, a colleague, a relative, an associate, an enemy, any and all in between. It is appreciated. Now, apologies that this video is a little late. I was waiting for the initial weigh-ins for the Berlanga McCrory fight. Then a few other bits and pieces happened and, you know, such and such. But we're here now. Now, usually I will do things in sections when it comes to different fight cards, but the only other fight that I have any knowledge of prior to the main event, prior to sort of the Matchroom card, is the Conor Butler and Jay Harris fight, which will also be on DAZN. So I'll talk about that one right now, and then from there we'll basically get into the Matchroom card and go through my thoughts on some of the fights on that one. It's not going to be a very long video because I don't know all the different fighters on each one, but yeah, we'll see where we get to. So talking about Conor Butler and Jay Harris, this is a 3-belt unification for the Commonwealth, British and European championships, the proper European, the EBU one, not the WBO version or the IBF version. So ultimately you got Conor Walker, who I believe is about 25, 26, and Jay Harris 33. So he's sort of like the more, if you want to call him, the grizzled veteran. The higher ceiling, I mean, he's been in there with Martinez at world level, accounted himself very well, stayed on his feet for the entire distance, and that sort of served him in pretty good stead. He did suffer a loss after that, but he's pretty much, on the domestic scene has cleaned up. But you've got Conor Butler, who, look, Conor Butler is a kind of guy whereby he's been grafting sort of on that, that UK, the UK scene, underground, sort of the small hall shows, but now he's obviously getting his opportunity on a platform sort of in the main event. The way I see this fight, you've got Jay Harris is very much a bit of a mover. He's sort of a guy that can sort of work the periphery of the ring, uses jab well, has pretty good footwork, and decent combinations on the outside. Whereas Conor Butler is more of a person that he uses his jab to sort of close distance, tries to get more inside, to be a bit busier, to work the body, just to be active, be a bit more dangerous in that sense. Of the two of them, look, Jay Harris has got the most experience. He also has suffered 2 KO defeats out of his last 4 fights, which could always be a concern. But he has operated at the higher level, and I believe, in my opinion, he's probably beaten a better standard of opponent than Conor Butler has, and that Conor Butler is at this point in time. This is Butler's step up, so to speak. I think he's 10-0-1 as a pro, or 11-0-1. So he's definitely sort of the one with, I guess, the momentum, and he's got the O to protect. And Jay doesn't, and I think part of that will give him a bit more of a carefree attitude in this fight. But looking at it just from not a youthful perspective, but from just an experienced perspective, and I think Jay Harris is a slightly bit taller than Conor as well, I think he's going to be able to control the majority of this fight at his range, his distance, his pace. And so with that being said, Jay Harris is obviously the proper EBU champion. Conor is the British and the Commonwealth. But I do think that Jay Harris is going to take this fight on points. He's going to go the distance, in my opinion, but I think he does take it on points. Probably a majority or split decision. I reckon he'll rack up enough rounds early, and then sort of maybe old man Conor Butler out of the later rounds, maybe to sneak 1 or 2. That's my opinion. Let me know what you guys think. But yeah, after that, now let's talk about the Matchroom card. Okay, moving on to the Matchroom card. There's only a few of the fights where I know sort of the guys pretty well. there's a lot of names on there, but obviously some of them I don't know their opponent, so I'm just gonna have to assume that they will come through, you know, tough tests, but they'll win. The main one the first one I want to speak about is Yanquiel Rivera against Andy Dominguez Velasquez. This, I believe, is Yanquiel's first title. I think it's like a regional belt, but I'm not sure which one exactly is on the line. But obviously this fight takes place at flyweight, so 112 pounds. Basically, Yanquiel, obviously decorated amateur Olympian for is it Dominican Republic? I think he is. Puerto Rican. I believe he is. Ultimately, one thing I've noticed about Yanquiel, his defense is very leaky. He's got a good chin, but he's got good movement, good combination, but he does take probably more shots than he should. Now, that being said, a lot of the time he is taking shots against guys who seem to have a height and a reach advantage, and it's almost like him having to break into the distance. He has a habit of switching stances in the pocket, which doesn't always bode well for you, but he's got a lot of power, as most Puerto Rican fighters do. In this particular instance, I think he is amateur pedigree, and obviously his punching power will keep him, I don't want to say keep him safe, but I think it will overcome the opponent, Andy Dominguez. Yeah, I feel like he'll take this one. I'm thinking a late stoppage. I think this is over 10 rounds. I think about maybe round 8 or round 9. I reckon he probably gets to Dominguez, takes him out, but it's going to be one of those fights where, again, you just see him, maybe he's taking a bit too much punishment that you'd like to see for a prospect, even though he's being matched like fairly tough, fairly quickly. Moving up the card, you've got Shakram Giasov versus Pablo Cesar Cano. Now, most people know Cano, sort of very experienced guy, a former contender, now pretty much gatekeeper to sort of that upper level in the I think it's the middleweight division Shakram operates in. No, he's in welterweight. So yeah, Pablo Cano is very much a, like, he's a stern test. He's a guy that he's been around, never quite reached the top, but he's the kind of person where if you're not ready to fight those top guys, he will kind of expose you in that sense. Now with this one, I think Giasov is a pretty special talent, very accomplished amateur, very good punch power, very good movement. Actually, no, to be fair, his punch power isn't that great, but his movement and punch selection is very good, and he knows where to place the punches to cause, I guess, that maximum effect. He's not a KO artist, so I don't expect this one to end in a stoppage. If it does, I do think it will be very late based on his track record, but I do think this will be a very comfortable one-sided showing, just showing again the skills and the level of Giasov. So I do expect him to win this one, unanimous decision. After that, we've got Antonio Vargas and Jonathan Rodriguez. Now, Jonathan Rodriguez is, I guess, the name people may recognize because he's the one who obviously beat Cal Yafai in his final match before he retired. That was back in, I think it was September or October of last year. And he basically said, look, give me a chance, and I'll keep proving. Well, he's got his chance now against Antonio Vargas, and this is for like a WBA Continentals belt or something like that, which, sort of get him further up the rankings to be able to maybe have a look at the regular title transition into a full title down the line. I think this one's at bantamweight. This to me will be probably one of the more taxing fights on the card. Both guys are susceptible to being hit. I do believe both guys have lost via a stoppage before. I just need to double check that actually. Yeah, Antonio Vargas, Jonathan Rodriguez has lost via stoppage, and Vargas lost via stoppage. So yeah, both guys have tasted the canvas and have sort of not seen the final bell. What I will say is, just based on, I guess, the momentum of the two, I feel like Rodriguez is kind of got the momentum on his side. He's still technically, I guess, the away fighter, but I feel like after this fight he will probably end up getting a tentative deal with Matchroom. I could see this sort of being his proving ground. So with that in mind, I do think that Rodriguez will come through this one. I'm not sure if it's going to be a stoppage though. I do think it's actually going to be a sort of a majority, a split decision down to the wire. Vargas is tough, and Vargas, you know, he doesn't hit as hard as maybe Jonathan does. Actually, no, technically you might say that he hits a little bit harder. He's got a couple more KOs on his record, but yeah, I think the momentum's with Jonathan, so I'm going to give Jonathan the edge here, and I do believe that he will end up winning this fight on points. Then we've got Andy Cruz against Brian Zamaripa. Now this fight is one of those ones where, if Cruz was, like I say, 8-0 prospect or 7-0, you say, yeah, this is the right type of opponent for him. But him sort of, this being his, I think is this his third or his fourth fight? I think this is his third fight now. Yeah, this is actually his third. He's being matched pretty tough, pretty aggressively, but he's being matched against a style of opponent that is perfect for him. And Zamaripa is no different. Like, he's not a guy that has any sort of movement, head or otherwise. He's very much a high guard type guy. Walk forward, tuck up, take shots to try and land his own. And those kind of people is who Andy Cruz is going to thrive on. There's no movement to worry about. He's going to be able to see the punches coming from all angles. You're going to see that magical footwork of his. I mean, you know, people talk about like Ben Whittaker's showboating and stuff. Like, Andy Cruz employs the showboating in his actual movement, from amateurs to even in the ring. You can kind of see almost like certain times it looks like he's taking the piss with his opponent. And I feel like this is going to be another showcase for him, where he's just going to be raining punches left, right and center from angles that Zamaripa didn't even think was possible. And it's ultimately just going to come down to, I think, the ref stepping in and stopping a barrage. I don't think it's going to be a clean knockout, like, you know, him getting dropped to the floor savagely, but I do think he's just going to be in there sort of taking shot after shot, getting wobbled, getting rocked, and then the referee decides to jump in. And I think that probably because Zamaripa's a little bit more fresher, younger than like a Straffon was, I do see that kind of taking place about between rounds 5 to 7. But it's going to be one of those, again, we're going to be looking at this fight thinking, yeah, Andy Cruz is the truth. And thus far he was in the amateurs, and I do think that is going to be him in the pros. So I'm looking forward to seeing the display that he puts on. Now, last but not least, we've got Edgar Berlanga versus Padraig McCrory. And I don't know a huge amount of McCrory. I've seen a couple of his fights. I know they call him the Nail, I believe, or the Hammer. It's the Hammer they call him. And obviously you've got Berlanga, who was famous for having 16 first round KOs in a row, and then in his last 5 fights hasn't been able to score a knockout, and has gone points. McCrory is 18-0 with 9 KOs, so you would then assume that the punching power does go with Berlanga. He hasn't had a KO in his last 3, but when you look at the level of opposition, both guys have not faced a great level, but you've got people like Roma Angulo, you've got Coceres, and you've got I think it was Steve Rolls. These are guys that Edgar Berlanga has faced. Now, to me, all 3 of those guys are of a better standard than Padraig McCrory. Jason Quigley, even you could say that Quigley is probably McCrory level, if not maybe just slightly below. So I feel like Berlanga's had better tests to this level than McCrory has. What McCrory does have, he does have a sharp right hand. It's a lot more powerful than his punching, than his KO percentage suggests, based on the footage and the sort of the fights I have seen of his. But I don't feel like his movement is the greatest. It's not terrible, but it's not the greatest. And at the age of, I think he's 35 now, whereas Berlanga, I believe, is 26, 27. I think the youth of Berlanga is gonna sort of pay dividends here. Now, neither guy has obviously been knocked out, but Berlanga has been dropped before. McCrory is the slightly taller guy, which means that Berlanga is going to always end up in the kill zone to get his work off. But I feel like his youthfulness and his explosiveness is going to be able to get him to the target quicker than McCrory can counter, especially in those critical moments. And because of that, I do think that Edgar Berlanga will win this fight. McCrory he can frustrate him, especially in those first rounds. I do expect him to be up on the scorecard at the time of a potential stoppage, but my feeling is that between sort of rounds 7 to 9, things start to unravel a little bit for McCrory. Obviously he's tough, he's got the Irish spirit, and he's not going to go out, he's not going to basically lay down in this fight. He's going to have to be put out. But I do think that between sort of 7 and 9, the pressure is going to start to mount, the punches are going to start to accumulate, and I do think Edgar Berlanga gets his first knockout in 6 fights. That's sort of my position on that one. Look, please let me know what you guys think down below. This has been a short one. This also hasn't been a very informed one as to some of my usual basis picks, because I only know a few of the people. So yeah, I can't give information on all the different fights and all the different ways that they can go, but I hope that you have enjoyed. If you think I'm wrong on any of these, please put them in the comments. Let me know which ones I got incredibly wrong. I'll be interested to see that. But yeah, like, subscribe and share as always. But for right now, that's basis picks locked.